Thank you for having you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your sympathy. And sorry for the smaller hall. Actually, we booked the smaller one, and on the last minute we changed to the bigger one. So my apology for all the standing there. It's my personal apology for you. Will you accept it? Thank you. Okay. So it wasn't a planning day for us, but because we have special guests, which we will introduce very soon. But let's start now with just a few Quran reading to start with. Thank you.
ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
Thank you. Now we will have the national anthem and following with 1 minute silence. So please just keep standing. Thank you. Thank you. 1 minute silence, please. Okay, thank you. Have a seat, please. It's a mixed feeling because we're supposed to celebrate November 29, the International Day of Solidarity for Palestine. And then now we have what's happening in Gaza. I wasn't there in 1948. I wasn't there in 1967. but like most of you, we heard a lot of stories. We read lots of articles and books, and we watch lots of videos and YouTubes about what happened. Like nowadays, I never ever seen in my life. Maybe this is because of the social media, so no one can hide anything. With your mobile, with internet connection, you can deliver a message, a clear message. Don't give up. Don't stop talking about Palestine again and again. It is not about Muslims, Christians, Jewish, Hindus. It is a human. It's clear, a human. We all need to stand for this. I will not take more time of this. I will hand over to Miharu to start the programs. We have very good speakers. We have a special guest. You will have a time to ask questions or to comment on this. Thank you. Miharu?
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Miharu tōku ingoa, ko Ngāti Whātua ki Kaipara te iwi no te tau u ahau. My name is Miharu, I am from Ngāti Whātua ki Kaipara, and I whakapapa to te tau u. For the last, going on 6 weeks now, I've been the kaimahi to our Palestinian whānau here in Tamaki, and tonight I will be your MC. First up, we have Dr. Ahmed Sahadi. He is a representative of the Palestinian community here in Aotearoa. No mai, haere mai.
Kia ora whānau, kia ora everyone. Ko Ahmed Tuka Ingwa. My name is Ahmed. I am basically, I'm Palestinian New Zealander. I'm basically from Jerusalem. And I'm here just to share a couple of words with you before I open the floor for Francesca, our special guest for today. So first, let me acknowledge everyone here tonight. I want to acknowledge everyone for turning up here tonight. On my way here to the, I was with Francesca and Sarah and Tamim and the team here, and we saw people coming. And Francesca asked me, are they all these people and cars coming to our event? And I said to her, yes, joking. I didn't know that, we really have this. So I'm embarrassed now. But honestly, thank you very much. This shows actually that we do hold to the truth. This shows our commitment to to social justice and human rights. And this is what I want to talk about too. But before that, let me also acknowledge Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. She's visiting us, so she was just visiting Australia, and she's visiting us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand for a couple of days. I would like also to acknowledge the teams, actually multiple teams who have been organizing multiple events over the last couple of weeks, and especially the Palestinian, the Maori, and the national, multi-background teams that have been working all over the country, organizing different events to support Palestine human rights. And finally, the PACC and the PSNA particularly for doing this job. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge a very special person that we lost yesterday. I personally lost a friend yesterday in Gaza, and the whole Palestinian community and the whole Palestinian actually people in Gaza have lost in the time that they really need that person. This person is Dr. Ashraf Labad. He is the head of the internal medicine at Al-Shifa Hospital. Yesterday, with my family, my wife is a doctor. She's a GP. I'm an academic doctor too. And our friend, Dr. Ashraf, we've been in touch with him until just a few days ago. And every day he would be sending us information about what's going on at Al-Shifa Hospital. Very sad news. He used to send us numbers of patients, the surgeries that patients they're operating on at the corridors, that they have run out of medications, that they have too many injured children that they can't deal with, and all this sort of news. But one thing that he kept saying that I remember, but it's in my head since yesterday, I can't get it out of my head. Every time he would send these messages, I ask him, how are you doing? And he doesn't answer how he's doing. He would say just one thing, I'm never gonna leave Al-Shifa Hospital unless there is a ceasefire or as a dead body. And unfortunately, the second happened. He's dead now. He was killed. He was targeted. He has been targeted by the Israeli airstrikes. Dr. Ashraf is not just a doctor. He's a professor in medicine. So he used to lead all the doctors, internal medicine doctors in Gaza, which is very sad. So they have lost now huge expertise. If you lose a machine, you can replace it. But if you lose like a scientist, a professor, a doctor like this, how would you replace them, especially in the current situation? So I want to just remind everyone here that tonight we're not here to celebrate. We're here to renew our commitment to end this genocide that is happening right now in Gaza. But also, I promise you that we're gonna celebrate soon. So today, we're just renewing our commitment, but very soon, we're gonna celebrate the end of these massacres, and we're gonna be celebrating a free Palestine. And I will end with my final note. So today here, this is not a pro-Palestine event. This is not a pro-Palestine event, because I always keep saying you don't need even to be pro-Palestine to care about the massacres that are happening in Gaza. You don't need to be pro-Palestine. We're not asking people to be pro-Palestine. You just need to be a human being. You just need to be pro-justice. And this is what this event is about. So tonight, Francesca is going to actually be focusing on the Palestinian case, what is happening in Palestine, and particularly in Gaza, from a legal perspective, from a legal angle. And this will show us how that the Palestinian case is not a political thing, it's not a political case, it's a human rights case. It's a justice and freedom case that we all should be involved in. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Ahmed. Our next speaker is Francesca Albanese. Francesca is the United Nations Special Reporter on the situation of human rights in the Palestine territory that has been occupied since 1967. We're so grateful to have you here today. No mai haere mai ki te wai orea.
Kia ora. Ko Francesca toko ingoa. Aha. And I'm very glad, pleased, honored, moved by many things. First of all, because you didn't run away as soon as my friend Ahmed said she's going to talk about international law. It's very good. But also because I'm very honored to be in in this country, first and foremost, Maori land. I'm happy to be with you, Tengata Whenua, and anyone who lives with you. This trip comes at a very tragic time, very tragic, dark hours for the Palestinians, for the Israelis, and for humanity, because this is what I see collapsing. As of the 7th of October, although the reality before the 7th of October was already horrible enough. And indeed, this trip has been planned for many months by brothers and sisters, comrades in Australia and New Zealand. And it has been a trip that has taught me a lot, because first of all, through our Australian friends, I've learned the importance of acknowledging the custodians of the land, those who have never ceded sovereignty, and I will never be in another and I will never be in another country where indigenous people have been suppressed and repressed without acknowledging them first and foremost. So thank you for teaching me that. It has also been a very humbling experience meeting so many First Nations and indigenous people and the Maori friends who spent time with me and other Palestinian friends today, coming from what I'm responsible to talk about, the fate of the Palestinian people. I'm not Palestinian, I'm not Israeli, I'm just someone who speaks on the ground of law. And as Ahmed was saying, it's about human rights and justice. And the question of Palestine remains very much a quest for human rights, freedom and dignity, and equality. Because this is not supposed to be read at the expense of the Israelis or their rights, or at the expense of the Jewish people. But as an Israeli friend says, between the river and the sea, in that tormented land, it's the Palestinians who are without rights. So this is why it's so common when speaking of international law and human rights to be told, yeah, pro-Palestinian. But let's look at the facts on the ground. The 7th of October has been groundbreaking. It is something that has pushed us on what I called ground zero of humanity. There is no question that what Hamas has done by killing Israeli civilians and by taking civilian hostages is a war crime. I've condemned it from the very beginning. At the same time, what Israel has done from the very 7th of October, and I will talk about the before the 7th of October in a few minutes. But what Israel has done is brutal and not necessarily unprecedented, but it's unprecedented in terms of intensity, in terms of scope, and in terms of relentlessness, while everything is being really televised, despite the fact that there are no journalists, no independent journalists in Gaza. Sorry, I correct. There are no international journalists in Gaza, because there are independent journalists, and 45 of them have been killed. And most of them, actually all of them, are Palestinians. And the Palestinians have become their very truth teller at the moment of incredible distress and grief. I've made headlines for having said something which is absolutely true. The fact that Israel has claimed the right to defend itself, to carry out this war, which is, again, war. And I've said, no, Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself under international law, which, mind you, doesn't mean that Israel doesn't have the right to protect itself. Of course it has this right. It has the right to protect itself, to protect its citizens, and frankly, also the Palestinian people who are still occupied and have been occupied for 56 years. But what self-defense means in international law is something much narrower than in the common parlance. It means the right to wage a war, which Israel doesn't have, not only because the threat doesn't emanate from another state, but because the threat emanated from the territory Israel has maintained under belligerent occupation. And so the response was to be completely different in terms of law and order. And instead, there has been now 44 days of heavy bombing, 6,000 bombs on average per week, launched on a strip of land of 360 square kilometers inhabited by 2.2 million people. And at least 12,000 have already been killed, and 5,000 of them are children. And this death toll is normal with this level of bombing in the most crowded place on earth. And I often remind people, when you think of Gaza, if you manage to move beyond what you are fed by the media, which often repeats without criticizing, without really questioning what Israeli military leaders say. But if you imagine that half of the population in Gaza is under 18. So when you hear, oh, these people have voted for Hamas, no, they have not even voted for Hamas, because they were not even born, half of them were not even born when the blockade of Gaza started, because we shall not forget, Gaza has been under an unlawful blockade for 16 years, with 5 major wars, which had killed thousands of people, including 500 children, and destroyed hospitals and mosques and schools, and still, the people in Gaza had survived. This time is different, because in 45 days, Israel has destroyed 50% of the civilian infrastructure, flattening entire residential buildings, 40,000 homes, mosques, churches, schools, and bakeries, and the sewage system, and the electricity system. Israel is making living conditions in Gaza impossible. Was it really, even if there were a right to defend itself, is this in line with international law? No, because there are 3 basic principles. The principle of distinction. So a military action needs always to differentiate between civilians and military objectives, between, and military personnel, combatants, between civilian objects and military objects. And if you listen to what Israeli leaders have said since the beginning, it was not a military objective. There was no military target. The target has never been to eradicate Hamas military capacity. In the beginning, it was said, we have to eradicate Hamas. How do you eradicate a political movement? How do you eradicate a political reality, which has also lived thanks to the blockade that Israel has imposed on Gaza? And also, during the words that have been used are very dangerous, and in fact denote genocidal intent. Flatten Gaza, erase Gaza, kill sorry for the kids, the animals, the human animals. No, they are not even animals. Sorry for the animals who are compared to the Palestinians. This language is awful and should have been condemned. And also, this call has been amplified in the Israeli public. And there are many Israelis who are against it. Really, they are against it and have opposed themselves, like many Jews around the world. They oppose it and they say, this is not in my name. So this is one, I agree with Maher. This is not a clash of civilization. This is not a clash for religion. This is still an anachronistic settler colonial regime that pursues the acquisition of land by forcibly displaced its native indigenous population. In fact, 75% of the people in Gaza are not even from Gaza, they are from modern-day Israel. But so all this destruction is pushing the people in Gaza southern and southern, while the south of Gaza is also being bombed. And no water, no medicine, no food, no essential supplies have been allowed in. This is catastrophic and this is criminal. So this is why, together with other rapporteurs, we have denounced war crimes, crimes against humanity, and possibly genocide, but it's not a textbook case of genocide. I argue that this is a new form of genocide implemented through modern means of warfare, 21st century means of warfare. And before I conclude, there are two things I wanted to share. The West Bank and East Jerusalem. We shall not forget what's happening there, where there is no Hamas military presence, and still 200 Palestinians have been killed. 50 of them are children, Palestinian prisoners, and now it's reported, there are even videos that have been released by the army, which, by the way, it's acting without restraint, and it's even circulating this information. Palestinian prisoners have been tortured, humiliated, and I mean, I'm sorry when I see these images circulated on social media, because their dignity is infringed times and times again every time these images go out. But this is why I said, while Israel has never acknowledged the Nakba, now they're calling for a second Nakba, openly. And in fact, dozens of communities in the West Bank have been forcibly displaced. Villagers are just packing and going. So what I understand, or probably I can't understand the pain for average Israelis who have been brought back to the images of the Holocaust through what they endured, because of truth, there is no question, they've been persecuted for centuries in Europe, for centuries, and there is something that the trauma builds in us and gets into our DNA. But so I say, if we can empathize with the Israelis, why we can't empathize with the Palestinians? Because for them as well, what's going on, it's really, really bringing back not only the memories of the Nakba in 1947-49, the memory of the Nakba in 1967, because 350,000 Palestinians were displaced, also amidst mass destructions in 1967. But the Nakba has never been over. The Palestinians have never come to a closure. I mean, even here, even in this country, I mean, like in Australia or everywhere in the West, the Palestinians struggle to have their past acknowledged. They have to explain over and over their history, their past. The pattern of anti-Palestinian racism that is tangible in the West is unacceptable. And this is why I say it's upon all of us to educate ourselves and educate the others and correct the misinformation that it comes from politicians or comes from our neighbors or the media. And last thing is that I'm often asked, what's next? I don't know, I wish I had a crystal ball, and I don't. And I wish I had a magic wand to go back to the day before the 7th of October, because I had the feeling that we were on the cusp of a change, because people had started to understand what is apartheid and why. Of course, the Palestinians living under apartheid, it cannot be otherwise, because when you have military rule imposed on 4+ million people and the Palestinians under occupation, while the Jewish Israelis who live in the settlements, which are war crimes in and of themselves, under Israeli law, civil law, of course it's discrimination. This legal dualism is the backbone of apartheid. We were just about to reach that level of awareness, and all is gone. So there is a lot of effort that needs to go into finding a path for humanity, where both people are recognized with their trauma, their wounds. I don't know how it will happen, but it's necessary that the international community, including your government, plays a role in it. Doesn't matter that New Zealand is far away, still votes in the General Assembly. Why doesn't it call for a ceasefire? While your Prime Minister declares a ceasefire in his personal capacity, what is it? Why is not the government declaring it? Because to block this kind of... to end the slaughtering of civilians, which frankly is affecting both the Palestinians but also the Israeli hostages. How to protect the hostages when bombs pour hour after hour over that desperate land? So this is why I say there are few things that need to be done now: ceasefire, unfettered humanitarian aid, humanitarian corridors that do not translate into channels for forced displacement of the Palestinians. There shouldn't be the camping in the Sinai, mass camping in the Sinai, because this is not what the traumatized people of Gaza needs. So other solutions must be explored, including the fact many of them will not be able to live in Gaza for a few years. But this is why I'm saying they should be able to be reunited with their families in Israel, in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, or elsewhere in the world, but they should be asked what's better for them now. And as we move forward, there cannot be any way out without ending the occupation and the apartheid regime, starting with the occupied Palestinian territory. Then 2 states, 1 state will be decided by the Palestinians and the Israelis, but there is no way that the situation can continue as is, and we can go back to the status quo prior to the 7th of October without an end of the occupation. Thank you very much.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, Francesca, and thank you once again for blessing Te Wai Orea, with your presence. How's about a chant from our little friend here?
Free, free! Palestine. From the river, free, free! Palestine. Free, free! Palestine. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
And just before we continue with the speakers, I'd just like to let everyone know that there will be an opportunity for some questions with Francesca at the end of the evening after all our speakers have spoken. Our next speaker is Dr. Samir Shamut Tarakme. He is a lecturer in resilient and sustainable architecture at Unitec at Auckland, New Zealand, and also lectures at Jordan University of Science and Technology in Urban, Jordan. Samir is the CEO of Amen Investments, a large medical investment company in the West Bank investing in 3 major hospitals. Additionally, he is the founder of John Z for Sustainable Development. Dr. Tarakme recently organized a co-chaired the Resilience and Responsible Architecture Conference, earning an Excellence Award for promoting Arabic Māori awareness. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Samir.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for coming today for Palestine. I'm a Palestinian. I'm from the West Bank, and I'm an architect. We look at the world from a different perspective, the built environment, socially, economically, and environmentally. Today, I wanted Today, I wanted to talk about the Palestinian cause from a different perspective, from the built environment perspective. And this video was prepared to be presented at the Resilient and Responsible Architecture and Urbanism. And in that conference, researchers come from around the globe to discuss the issues around our built environment. How can we move forward? We are losing cities, villages, climate change, and social injustice, economical injustice. This is all related. It's one system. We cannot, and that's why we are all included in this equation. Yeah, we can start the video.
العمارة أبجدية حية، ترى، تتنفس، تشعر، آدمية، تضحك حين البهية وتبكي درب الأسي. العمارة شهد المشاهد كلها، تاريخاً، تهجيراً، كوارث الطبيعة البشرية. العمارة بالإنسان، شاهد عن الإنسان، شاهد على الإنسان. بدأت مأوى بسيط من الطبيعة، مرناً مع الطبيعة، إلى أن فقد مرونته واستجد طبيعة غير الطبيعة، طبيعة إنسانية لا إنسانية، تقسو على الطبيعة، طبيعة تولد طبيعة، طبيعة تهب طبيعة. العمارة أبجدية حية، إلى أن فقد مرونته واستجد طبيعة غير الطبيعة، طبيعة إنسانية لا إنسانية. العمارة شهد المشاهد كلها، تاريخاً، تهجيراً، كوارث الطبيعة البشرية.
This video started with a hakapufiri from Unitec. And it says, from the birds that fly above us to the waving of the tides below, we welcome you. This is what Titayo says to us, the environment. This is something I've learned here in Aotearoa. The environment welcomes us to do what? To do this. To build cities that lack the resilience to cope with challenges, to build cities that lack the ability to apply justice, to preserve the environment, and to protect our whānau, the children of everyone. We started living in a cave, resilient to nature, not annoying the environment, living together. And then growing, ever-growing built environment. 8 billion people living now on this planet. Are we equal? No. No, never. And I was just laughing when international law was brought into the conversation today. Where is international law? There is no international law. So the fact that we have to actually rethink our international law, rethink the United Nations, and rethink the way human beings are building on this planet so we can continue. Maybe we should give some voice and power to the people of wisdom instead of these idiots that we vote for. Come on, guys. Because these idiots are the reason why our cities suffered in the floods this year. In Hawke's Bay, the leaders that put the laws there, that build our cities, are responsible for that. But not only in Aotearoa. We were not only responsible for climate change impacts. It is the responsibility of the global community. Palestine as well. It is the responsibility of the global community, and climate change will keep going and going taking the rights of many people that did not have their rights, right? Mother Earth is natural, is a living creature. And all the systems are related to each other. We have social injustice, we have environmental imbalance, and we have economical inequality. We have a group of people with most of the wealth, and the rest are waiting for the food to be allowed to access to where they are. I'm from the West Bank, and you mentioned that we don't want to forget the West Bank and Gaza and the East Jerusalem. And I wanted to say that coming to New Zealand was a dream to see how Tangata Whenua are living. And I have a friend of mine who's Maori. She told me, when I talk to you, I feel like I traveled in time and I met one of my grandfathers. Because they can relate somehow. They didn't have social media, so we didn't see the videos. But they do relate. Palestine is a cause of justice. And everyone here today, I'm sure, you can even speak better and louder to everyone involved in any decision making around the globe, including Aotearoa. Please keep calling for ceasefire, and don't forget us in the West Bank. We are also suffering. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Summer. Our next speaker is Rahaf Joda. They're a young speaker who is always at our protests sharing her amazing speeches. Give a round of applause for Rahaf, please.
Assalamu alaikum and kia ora, everyone. Today I'll be reading you a poem I wrote called The Echoes of Silence. Palestine, where the breeze now carries the cries of mothers, wails of fathers, whispers of children buried under the rubble. In recent weeks, tragedy echoes louder and louder. Families torn apart, wiped out, leaving behind a silence that screams injustice. Innocent lives, dreams unrealized, found beneath the rubble of a conflict unwanted. Not just olive trees whispering tales, but the cries of those left behind, those who have lost everything. Look at the scarred landscape, not just by history, but fresh wounds of today. It's not just a story anymore, it's the cries of the broken, those who have lost it all. The Nakba isn't a distant memory anymore, it is a reoccurring nightmare, a living nightmare today. We stand here witnesses and participants in a crucial moment of shared history. On this day of solidarity, we ask, where is it? Where is the resolve beyond words? United, yet echoes seem to vanish in a world of unfulfilled promises. Where is the action that breathes life into aspirations? The unity forging paths toward change, where is it? Innocence lost, dreams shattered, families erased, is the harsh reality of Palestine. In the rhythm of solidarity, our hearts beat as one, not just to dance through resistance, but to stand firm, against repeating injustice. Staying silent is not an option. It's not neutrality, but complicity. Staying silent is standing with the oppressors, turning a blind eye to cries for help. Those who stay silent are contributors to the suffering of people in Palestine. We are gathered not just in unity, but in the raw reality of now. It's not about dreams of a better future, but ensuring these nightmares end. In the heart of Palestine, where scars are fresh, we declare, enough is enough. Free Palestine, or Palestine will continue to bleed. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Minto. John Minto is the chair of PSNA, and the Palestinian community are delighted to have him here today. Please welcome John Minto.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā hoe whā, e ngā tangata whenua o tēnei rohi. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Yeah, greetings everybody. You know, it's been a pretty horrific 5 weeks, if we think about it. And I know the Palestinian community here have suffered incredible trauma. And those of us who are the people in this room supporting the Palestinian community, it's been a very tough time. We've seen in the last 5 weeks the equivalent of every student in 17 average-sized New Zealand primary schools be slaughtered by the Israeli regime. And even more shocking than that is the fact that while this genocide has been played out before our eyes, our political leaders have been utterly silent. This will leave an indelible stain on the Labour Party, on the National Party, and in fact a stain on all of us, because we're all part of this collective that we call Aotearoa New Zealand. You know, there's not many times I feel ashamed, you know, to be a New Zealander, but the last few weeks has been very tough to find anything to be proud of, aside from the people of New Zealand getting out and marching and chanting and demanding freedom for Palestine. And even in the last couple of days when, thank you, thanks, Patty. Even in the last couple of days when the Labour Party has come out and called for a ceasefire, nowhere in any of their language is a single word of criticism of Israel. Now you remember 2 days after the attacks on October the 6th, Chris Hipkins and Christopher Luxon, they condemned the killing of Israeli civilians. They used a lot of colourful language in doing it. They condemned the killing of Israeli civilians, and the killing of civilians is a war crime under the 4th Geneva Convention. We should always condemn the killing of civilians. But they have never once uttered a single word of criticism for the genocidal slaughter of Palestinians. It is utterly shameful. And I think all of us who, those of us who know a little bit about it, and Francesca knows more about war crimes and crimes against humanity than I do, but even from a common sense point of view, collective punishment of the people of Gaza is a war crime. Withholding food, withholding water, withholding electricity, withholding fuel to allow the generators to go so that the babies can be kept safe in their incubators. These are war crimes. Bombing a densely populated area is a war crime. And don't tell me they're going after Hamas. The Israeli Defense Force says they've prioritized damage over accuracy. This is genocide being played out before our eyes, and not a murmur of criticism from our politicians of Israel. You know, I've lived 70 years, and I cannot recall another time when we've seen genocide on our television screens night after night after night after night, and not a peep from our political leaders. It is deeply, deeply shameful. So this weekend, I think someone might say this later on, but around the country we are going to our MPs. We've got a fresh crop of MPs. We're going to them and we're saying we demand, doesn't matter what party you're in, we want Parliament, the entire New Zealand Parliament and the New Zealand people to condemn what's going on and demand a ceasefire and put our voice on the right side of history. Two more things to say. One of them is never let anybody tell you that the situation in Palestine, Israel is complicated. It is not complicated. It is absolutely simple. Francesca mentioned it in a couple of words. It's a settler colonial regime in Palestine. It's the same thing happened in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in Australia, to First Nations peoples in North America. You get immigrants, and Francesca was apologising at a meeting earlier today, as coming from the continent which provides these colonists. So from Europe, people have come out, and like they came to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and there was immigration was encouraged until the numbers built up where the European population was big enough, strong enough militarily to take over. And at that point, Governor George Grey launched his attack on the Waikato, and to crush Maori resistance to colonisation. Same things happened all around the world. That happened in Palestine. Immigration from Zionist Jews in Eastern Europe encouraged immigration through the 1920s, 1930s. Once they became big enough, strong enough, they knew that they would be able to take on any of the Arab armies that might support Palestine. They started their Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, the massacring of piles of Palestinians, pushing them from the area which Israel wanted for itself into Gaza and into what is now the occupied West Bank. So though 80% of those people living in Gaza, they can walk to the fence, the security fence, they can look out, they can see where their villages were in many cases. They can see where Israel says, you will never be allowed to return to your land. And those people have a right under international law to return to their land, but they are denied that by Israel. And for 75 years that's happened. And Israel's always been protected by a small number of Western countries, the US in particular, in not having to do that. And they always claim it's security, they always claim they're the victim, they always claim that it's someone else's problem. It's their problem, it's their policies, it's their genocide. It's not the problem of, well, it is the problem of Palestinians, but not a problem caused by Palestinians. The last thing is this. We've been involved in this for, Palestinians have been involved in this for 75 years. What have Palestinians asked us to do to support their struggle? It's the same thing Black South Africans asked us to support in their struggle. From the late 1950s, Albert Lutuli, the ANC leader, made the first call for boycotts of South Africa, boycotts of white South Africa. He said, don't send us guns, but use your power to boycott that country. And over a significant period of time, the world did that till the late 1980s, when the strength of the people of the world was much stronger than the strength of our political leaders, who were covering for the apartheid regime in South Africa. And we were able to back up the struggle. So outside, we were supporting the struggle inside, and eventually the regime toppled. The same thing will happen in Israel. with the struggle inside, and then with the people of the world joining hands and saying, we are going to support boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. Now, you know, it's one of those things, as a teacher, you know that when you say things, people don't necessarily get the full message, but they understand it when they say it themselves. Okay? So, repeat after me. Boycott! 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 Divest! 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 Sanctions! 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 Sanctions now! Sanctions now! Kia ora koutou.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, John, thank you. I'm going to invite a rōpū that I am very close with and have been working alongside the last 6 weeks, and I just wanted to share how in awe I am of their resistance. Palestinian youth Aotearoa have been working consistently in almost the last 6 weeks and creating events and vigils for their community. Last week alone, there were 5 women assaulted at these events. And of course, we had the young Pepe that was assaulted on Sunday. All of this, while still mourning their people, Palestinian youth continue to show up to make space for their community to mourn and speak out against the genocide that's happening in Palestine right now. And I'm so honored to be their kaimahi the last couple of weeks. So no mai haere mai, Palestinian youth Aotearoa.
Kia ora. Thank you, Miharo. And thank you to everyone who's got together here today. A special thank you to Francesca as well, who's just popped out, but she'll hear it later. We are Palestinian Youth Aotearoa. We don't just represent the youth. We are the youth, by the youth, for the youth, and for Aotearoa. Don't underestimate the power of youth. Even back in Israel, thank you, they are speaking up. They are the ones who are realizing what's happening, and they're the ones that are going to make a difference. So we're here today, and we're here every single day, and we'll be there until we have a free Palestine. So I'm Minas Al-Ansari, and I'm from Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives. I do have an aunt who resides in Gaza. And one of her last messages, which are very inconsistent, but we're getting there, she shared how when they had to leave their house, they just walked on the streets. And there were a lot of people's houses that were open to everyone. And this is exactly what we represent. We are here for everyone. And it might just be, a Palestinian part of our culture, part of our blood, but we will always support the human rights and the indigenous friends that have opened their houses and doors and hearts for us. So, thank you.
I think I'll do this instead. So thank you, Minas, for that. And now I want to share a story with you all. I am from Palestine. I am from Gaza. Both my parents from Gaza and both my grandparents are from Gaza as well. Now, I may never have lived there, unfortunately. However, it was ingrained in me since I was a child that that's where I'm from. I am from Gaza. And it's in these moments that I could not be prouder to be the rightfully owner of the land of Palestine. Gaza will always and forever be my home for my parents, for my grandparents, for my kids, and for my grandchildren as well. If you think this will deter us from shouting from every rooftop that this is our land, you're highly mistaken. If you think that this will deter us from shouting, you're mistaken. I have family that are currently there. We go days and days without getting to hear from them. We don't know what's going on. We're holding our phones for hours waiting for a response. None of you will ever understand the anguish, the sadness, the anger that we all hold, and I hope none of you ever will. I will forever be a proud Palestinian, and I'll always be Ghazawi. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to do a quick chant by Alush and Maya. So everyone raise your hands up.
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Blood. Ceasefire now. Blood. Blood. Blood on your hands.
Blood.
Blood.
Blood on your hands. Louder. Blood on your hands. Gonna go.
Blood. Blood. Blood on your hands.
Blood, blood, blood on your hands.
Blood.
Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine!
All right, so now is the time that we're meant to be having questions and answers with Francesca. Ahmed's going to take that. Also, just FYI for anyone that came late, tonight has been live streamed, so you can catch all speeches on the live stream. Feel free to come up to myself or our media team to find out what that YouTube channel is. Thank you.
Okay, kia ora everyone. So the time left is limited, and I know that's getting a bit late. So let's get to the questions directly. Just one thing, if we can please, when you have a question, if you can just be specific with your question, so that we can, help Francesca to give you the answer you want. Thank you. Okay, so do we have a mic for those who are going to be asking questions?
If
yeah.
you could just stand
Okay.
up and come over here,
Okay,
because I don't
so
think I can reach all that far.
Thank you, Francesca, for.
Francesca will also leave between 9 and 9:05, so she's going to be leaving for 5 minutes and coming back. Yeah. But overall, we have about 20 minutes for the whole thing. Thank you, please.
Thank you, Francesca. Just a question. I want to understand what the international law defines hostages as, because there is always talk about 200 or 250 Israeli hostages. While we all pray for the safe release of civilians from both sides, that's Israelis, if there are any civilians, and obviously the Palestinians in their thousands. Now, we all know that a lot of the people that were captured on the 7th of October were actually members of the Gaza brigade that was encircling Gaza, and some of the intelligence people running the checkpoints and things and spying on Gaza. Does the international law consider those people combatants, or are they considered as hostages? Thank you.
Yeah, allora. So, it seems that you have better information than I do, because in fact there is no clarity about the status of the 239 people who have been taken hostage. Taking hostage under international law, it's a war crime if the people are civilians, which means civilians or even soldiers out of duty. People who are in their homes or listening to music or having dinners, they are civilians and they can never be taken hostage. While if soldiers were taken, they are prisoners of war, but it's still a crime when soldiers are taken hostage as a bargaining chip. This is what international law says. And this is why I've unequivocally called for the release of all hostages, especially because there are babies. There are 9-month-old, 2 years old, they should return home. And in the same breath, and even before the 7th of October, I've asked for the release of all Palestinians detained arbitrarily, and there are in the thousands. There were already over 1,200 Palestinians held without trial and without charge, including, there are about 700 children who are arrested every year by Israeli soldiers, often taken away in the middle of the night from the quiet of their home. And the situation has been arbitrarily, marked by arbitrariness for a long time. And this is why I say it is to be resolved. Now, I heard the architect intervening before. I understand why people are upset and why there is little trust in international law. But the problem is not with international law not existing. It does exist. It's just not applied in the case of Palestine. And this is the problem. The problem is with the double standards that are unacceptable. But again, human rights are not a concession that has been made by states. This is what has been gained by the people. Those who stood against slavery, those who stood for women's rights, for farmer rights, indigenous people rights. So before trashing the baby away with the dirty water, we should be very, very careful in what we ask for. Because if it's not the power of a law that restores justice and equality for all, what remains is just brute force.
Just here, please. Mike.
Can I go? You go first.
Yeah, you can go first since you have the mic. Is that okay?
All right. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Francesca. Hi. How are you? Having fun in Auckland?
Not really.
All right, good. Because I'm gonna say I don't appreciate your visit. I don't appreciate the entity you belong to. I don't appreciate the organization you belong to, because it failed in protecting 13,000 civilians have been killed. 5,500 of them are children in the past month alone. I don't appreciate the entity you belong to because it has failed year after year in protecting our people from the genocidal occupation. I don't appreciate, you know what? If I do a job and I fail at it year after year, that means something is wrong with me or something is wrong with the organization I belong to. And you know better than me what is wrong with the organization you belong to. And the last thing, I don't, you know what, I'm a refugee from Haifa, from a village called Sindiana, that is 25 kilometers south of Haifa. And I even have documents of my grandfather paying taxes for the roads and the sewage in that city before 1948. And your organization has adopted, you know, the partition resolution, which means giving up my grandfather's land to some voting system so that other people can come over it. And that caused a miserable life for generation after generation, not only for my family, for thousands of people. And yet you failed to find a resolution. Just admit it that you have failed, admit that UN has failed in protecting our people rights, the self-determination right of the Palestinian people, and just say it.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. It's not, just let's put things in context. First of all, as a special rapporteur, I'm appointed by the United Nations to document and report the violations of international law in the occupied Palestinian territory. Before doing this, which just for clarity, I do that for free and in my free time. Before doing this, I was known as a scholar of Palestinian forced displacement. So frankly, I fully understand, I appreciate, and I take no offense with being pointed at as the cause of all evils. Because I do understand. I mean, I have been writing about this and the responsibility of the United Nations. And we can continue accusing each other about how bad the United Nations is. I'm just trying to help by bringing some sanity and some wisdom into today's reality. And this is what I do. I mean, yeah, okay, I can be blamed because I've been appointed by the United Nations. And then?
Yeah. Yes, please. But can I just remind everyone that our time is limited, only 5 minutes left, so can we be specific, please, with the questions?
Hero Francesca, thank you for your excellent presentation before. I got two questions to ask you, both brief. The first one is, do you know the people who are lodging charges of genocide against Israel? Do you personally, are they accessible to you? And the other question is, when Netanyahu was responding to questions of allegations of genocide, he rounded on the people and deflected their criticism by assuming, disingenuously I think, that they were referring to his bombing campaign. And he ignored totally the genocide, the campaign of blockade and the starvation that it's causing. There is no way that he can excuse that or divert questions about that. So my other question is, why haven't these people taken up that point and asked him to explain himself?
Thank you. Yeah, let's answer these questions first. Thank you.
Yes, I'm aware that there are a number of organizations and even countries who are planning to submit cases, make submissions to the International Criminal Court on a number of allegations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, including genocide. I just want to add that the International Criminal Court is one avenue, but there is also the possibility of universal jurisdiction being pursued by countries, I mean domestic courts, because I don't know what's the case of New Zealand, but there are many countries who have jurisdiction over war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So this is another option. I mean, it can be done if there is universal jurisdiction in over these crimes in New Zealand. This is also something that can be done here, and there is no statutory limitation for war crimes or crimes against humanity, so it can be brought even in years from now. I apologize, I'm not sure I understood the second question.
Well, just one question from here, and then we will take a 5 minutes break, okay? And then we'll be back to the questions for another 5 to 10 minutes. Let me give a question there. No, here, okay, so we have here this question, and yeah, I'll give you the chance after the break if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I strongly appreciate the anger of that person up there. Can I just say this? This is a typical setup. When you get a chance to bring the global aspect of neoliberalism into play, then you get harassed from these Mensheviks that want to get a place in Parliament, rather than the Bolsheviks that wanted to have international revolution. And it's international revolution that's going to answer it.
Okay, I give the chance to Francesca to respond briefly, and then we'll have about 10 minutes break. Thank you very much.
No response required. It wasn't a question. Take your break and please come back to
Okay, why the United Nations is doing nothing? The United Nations is going through its most acute crisis since its foundation. I don't know if you realize it, but the United Nations doesn't exist as a separate entity. It's an intergovernmental body. And while there are democratic instances, democratic bodies inside the United Nations, like the General Assembly, that since the decolonization represent the entire global community, or the Human Rights Council, the main body responsible for maintaining peace and security is the Security Council, which is, when it comes to Palestine, is paralyzed because of the US veto. So what is to be done, what is to be changed? I mean, again, I wish if I had the magic wand, we would be in another world, I promise, but we are not. So the reality is that this is not, if you want my opinion, this is not going to change because of the US all of a sudden changing its mind. Not immediately. What I'm interested in is that people in Gaza and people in the occupied Palestinian territory, where there is no protection for the Palestinians, because clearly there is no Israel protecting them, there is no Palestinian Authority protecting them, there is no one protecting them, there is a need for a protective presence that can be only mobilized through changes at country level. So this is why it's so important when you protest. It's so important that the government, at least in democracies, hear your voice and change their policies. I mean, I agree with what was said before. It's I need to go. It's fundamental. It's fundamental that measures are taken by the people. Because let's remember, the apartheid in South Africa was not brought down because all of a sudden states changed their mind. States made business with apartheid South Africa until the very late, until they could. But it was trade unions, workers, civil society, scholars, people changing the course of history. It can be done again and again. I'll be away for 5 minutes because I need to talk to the TV, and then I'll come back.
Thank you. So 5 minutes break. We will be back at, let's say, at 9:05. Thank you, everyone.
في صلاة يا جماعة، اللي بحب يصلي المغرب حنصلي المغرب برا، صلاة المغرب اللي بحب يصلي المغرب.
Sorry, Kotoma, if you're interested in asking a question later, can you please come see me over here? Please no, wait, we will be prioritising wahine voices and questions.
Kia ora koutou. Please, if people are outside, please come through. You can open those doors again at the back, please, and the curtains. Let some air in. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being attentive. Thanks for turning on your intellect and thinking about concision and thinking about how you're going to craft that question that's going to be not 20 words long, 10 words long, 10 words long. But can we please also remember that Francesca is here as our guest. And in our culture, extending hospitality to guests is very important, very important. So the indigenous people here, they talk about manakitanga, right? Manakitanga. And that, of course, can be the very basics of hospitality, giving someone food or drink, making sure they're fed. But on a deeper level, of course, it's about enhancing someone else's manna, right? Their dignity. So can we please extend Francesca the dignity that she deserves for being so outspoken on the Palestinian issue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Again, we've got 5 minutes, so please make your question brief and precise. Yes, please. Do we have the mic? Pardon? That's okay.
Thank you, sir. I agree with you. It makes two of us to believe that the settlements are the problem. And in fact, when I hear people, I think Ahmed, someone said before, it's not complex. It's not complex. People make it complex, but indeed it's very simple. Because I say, you often hear, oh, but these people don't make peace. They keep on struggling. Well, the Palestinians struggle for their own rights every day and the problem is, I agree with you, the settlements, because since 1967, while the Security Council had already ordered Israel to withdraw its military troops from the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, Israel had started building colonies after colonies after colonies. So let me say what they are, the colonies under international law. International law prohibits the transfer of the occupying power's civilian population into occupied land. This is a war crime, but also prohibits the forcible displacement of the occupied people within or outside of the land. So it's a double-edged illegality that goes with the settlements. And building the settlements, as I call them, the colonies, it implies structural violence because it confiscates land from the Palestinians. It leads to destruction of Palestinian civilian structure and life. Because it's, again, in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, the land is being taken inch after inch, homes after homes, and the trauma for the people who have to go through it, it's unspeakable. But there is also the fact that in order to preserve and maintain the 300 colonies that Israel has built in 56 years, there is a lot of violence is necessary because there is the whole army that operates inside the occupied territory, whose role is to maintain the security of the colonies. So this is why when I hear Israel claiming security risks, For sure there are security risks because violence begets violence. No one wants to be oppressed. No one wants to be dispossessed. So Israel confuses its own security with the security of its annexation plan, which has been already realized illegally in East Jerusalem. As of the 1980s, the United Nations have said every act aiming to change the status or the character of East Jerusalem is null and void. And still, nothing has been done, again, for political convenience. Because what is needed to stop all this? Action. And action, again, the United Nations charters prescribes under the law of state responsibility measures that need to be taken. Diplomatic measures, withdrawing of ambassadors, suspension of diplomatic relations. This has been tried recently in Russia, Ukraine, unlawful war, war of aggression, illegal occupation, and there have been diplomatic measures, political measures, suspension of Russia from a number of political or international political fora, and economic measures. There is no other way around unless and until Israel will comply with international law. The only thing that the international community must do is to resume legality through these measures, diplomatic, political, and economic measures.
Thank you. Jeffrey? Okay, so we'll go here and then there. I'm very sorry. Just one here and then we'll go there.
Thank you. I'll just make it quick. And very much enjoyed your address, Francesca. But I would like you to explain the universal jurisdiction, because we did apply it here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in 2006 with an Israeli war criminal, Yashi Malon. And I'm thinking that many of the politicians from Israel are actually former war criminals. And so being watchful about universal jurisdiction can be very helpful for all of us here to know that we can make private prosecutions.
Yeah, let's take two more questions from there. I think the mic is there now, right? Yeah. And we apologize for leaving you waiting, our friends. Sorry for that.
Kia ora from the Cook Islands, Samoa, and Nuhaka on the East Coast. Thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to ask, what do you expect Western leaders, including our own here in New Zealand, to do about this?
Thank you very much. And please, more of these precise questions, please. One other question, please.
Sorry, could I ask not to be on the live stream? So sorry, just to protect my occupation. Aroha, I just want to say, firstly, io voglio dire grazie mille, Francesca, for your time. And in terms of being able to do things after this, fingers crossed, comes to an end very soon, I know you said if you had a crystal ball, you'd be able to tell us, but currently New Zealand doesn't have any diplomatic representation of Palestine in country. That was supposed to happen. The diplomatic representative to Australia was supposed to present his credentials in Aotearoa to be able to be recognized here as well. So at the moment we don't have anyone on shore where if this were to conclude, we'd actually be able to speak to both sides of the issue to come to some sort of understanding of what needs to happen next. So I guess my question is, to what extent is that step, that diplomatic recognition, a necessity to any sort of solution, or is it a precursor? Is it required? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for these very concise questions. I'll try to give very concise answers. So universal jurisdiction is, I don't know if I can elaborate more than what I already said, in the sense I'm not familiar with the legal system here. But surely it's possible if New Zealand has a law that enables its court, you're nodding, so it does. Well, it can be done, but it needs to be, you need to have evidence and you need to have lawyers working on this. So definitely, look, there are extraordinary human rights organizations on the ground, both Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations, who are not only doing an essential job, an existential job at the time, which is very dangerous for all. And so I would, if I had the capacity, if I was a lawyer here and interested in picking up some of these cases, I would be in touch with them and see how to help and which cases can be prepared and submitted to national courts first and foremost. And there is another issue that is not often captured. And again, I don't know if New Zealand falls in this category of having its own citizens who are settlers, for example. But there are most of the settlers who are committing violations, abuses, and crimes against the Palestinians might have double nationality. Many of them come from the US, many of them come from Europe, which triggers not only a question of universal jurisdiction, but domestic law applied to nationals who commit crimes abroad. And this is a field that I believe is not fully developed. What Western leaders can do, I will be more hopeful. It's not just something, okay, the West has a lot of responsibilities because the West is not responding to its own constituencies. What I see happening in the West is that not only there is no outcry, there is no condemnation for what's happening in the occupied Palestinian territory, there is less than before. Before, at least, when there were attacks from settlers on Palestinian communities, you would hear some words of condemnation here and there. And now the silence is deafening. But also, it's not just the West. Because the West is even crushing the freedom of its own citizens to take the street and protest and express solidarity with the Palestinians. Of course, I keep on calling on the need for this protest to be fair and just and never to turn into hate actions or hate speech against anyone else. But again, the people in the West are taking the streets, and I often quote the example of the United States, where this year, more than ever, the protests are being led by American Jews. And this is not because the Palestinians are not engaged, but because the American Jews are also trying to protect their Palestinian brothers and sisters who, like after the 9/11, are being doxxed, are being treated, are being threatened, are being mistreated and abused because of their Palestinian identities. This is why I say, even here, watch out for anti-Palestinian racism, because it's very thick and it spreads across Western countries. But there are also, okay, there is the West, but there is also the rest. And apart from a few countries, very few countries in Europe and very few countries in Latin America who have been really principled from the very first hours of this massacre, the rest is silent. Frankly, including Arab countries, the reaction is very mild. So it's not something, it's a general problem of deafening silence from the international community, which is very disheartening. And there is no Palestinian political representation here. Well, I mean, this is because probably, I don't know if, I don't think that it has to do with the recognition of the state of Palestine, because there are PLO representations in other countries who do not recognize the state of Palestine. But the problem is that the fact that there is no PLO representation doesn't mean that there are no Palestinian presence here. In just 2 days, I've met so many wonderful Palestinians and I'm sure that they have a strong voice, and a strong voice that comes with wisdom and a place from compassion. So they should be heard. They should be listened to. I don't believe in the question of the two sides, because I really want to believe that there is one side that needs to be listened to, and is the side of humanity, and that cuts across both people involved. But again, I hope that there is enough space for the Palestinians in this country to express themselves and tell their story.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank Francesca for coming here and answering our questions. So I've got two questions. One of them is about the bureaucratic nature of the UN and how people have to wait for these nation states that are aligned to the US and are puppets of US imperialism, while masses of people, millions of people in the streets are coming out and demanding for ceasefire. And why do we have to wait for these corrupt bureaucrats for something to happen? And that's my first question. And the second one is, where does the Palestinian armed struggle stand in the international law? Is it justified? Is there any place for people who have lost all their families to have a chance to fight back? So that's my second question.
Thank you. One more question. Just one more question. Okay, so yeah, I'll give you a chance. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, again, thank you so much for being here. You touched before and on the news tonight about the need for an independent protection agency. Sorry, that wasn't, not your words, I don't think, but something like that. And you said maybe it's led by civilians, maybe it's led by governments. I just wanted you to maybe elaborate more on that, because sign me up.
Okay, one more question from that side, and then Francesca will answer. Two more questions, yeah? Yeah, sorry, I saw only one. Yes, please. But just, again, please precise and short.
Thank you very much. A lot of us work for big organizations, and business stance has been very, I guess, silenced against the Palestinians. How do you suggest we navigate these hurdles? So I know of a lot of Palestinians who cannot speak out because of those constraints on them.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. That's it from that side? Okay, last one from that side.
Oh, hi. Look, my question is about the legality around media. The international interface is still very two-sided and complicated. And it takes place in social media, which has been mentioned. And I want to know about the legality around the use of propaganda as something that we can all perhaps look to, rather than just providing evidence, amplifying the atrocity. We know doesn't always work, but providing evidence, but also how do we counter propaganda through a legal process?
Thank you. Okay.
So I'll just make this quick.
Yes, please.
I'm just wondering why, even 5 weeks on, it seems that there's still some hesitancy from people to support Palestine.
Thank you.
You asked, no, let me start with this one because I like it. What's the reason for people not to support Palestine? I don't know. Because again, for me, seriously, it's not about being pro-Palestinian. I don't think I'm really pro-Palestinian, but no one, I'm someone who stands with a victim. I grew up in a country where anti-Semitism, we were taught what anti-Semitism has done to our citizens, to men and women who are sent to die just because they were Jews. And it's something that has been applied for me since I was a child, I remember. So as there is this Italian Jewish playwright who says, recognize the Jew in the other. Recognize the one who's victimized, who's discriminated against, and who's mistreated just for who he or she is. And this is why I say it's important to keep a people-centered approach and stand with the victims. This doesn't mean to take away any of the rights of the Israelis between the river and the sea, nor the Jews. But the point is that between the river and the sea, those without rights, those who are abused and discriminated against, are the Palestinians. So, propaganda. Where shall we start? There is no way to stop propaganda other than with intelligence. Because, I mean, this is the thing that puzzles me of Western media, is that sometimes the question they ask are so stupid. They can, no, but seriously, it doesn't take a human rights expert to verify some basic facts. It doesn't take even someone with a law degree to read what is written and what has been denounced for decades by, again, as I said, Palestinians and human rights organizations. So all this surprise for what happened on the 7th of October, it's something that, I mean, puzzles me, because I said, in which alternative reality were these people living? Because we have denounced for decades. Then the Palestinian was becoming a powder keg and would explode anytime. No one could imagine this violence. No one could imagine the violence that has followed. But again, this is what oppression leads to, and this is why it should have been addressed before. But what is intolerable are two things. One is hate speech. And hate speech and incitement to violence, these are crimes and should not be tolerated. What is also intolerable is the silencing of voices who act calling for justice, calling for application of human rights. And this is something where, again, it seems to me that we are the guardians of our freedoms more than anyone else. And so this is why I think it's upon all of us to denounce cases of abuses, and those of us who have the power to push back, for example, against defamation, which is hitting many. One example is the anti-Semitism is real. Anti-Semitism still exists, like Islamophobia, Christianophobia, and other forms of bigotry and racism. We have to absorb it because it's still really a reality. At the same time, in the last 10 or so years, there has been an increasing conflation of criticism of Israel and Israeli practices with anti-Semitism. Now, you can't utter a word about Israel without being pointed at as an anti-Semite. Again, this is the kind of things that we need to push back, and I'm telling everyone, also try to identify when these patterns crosses the limit and results into anti-Palestinian racism, because one of the questions was, there are people who are being silenced. There are people who risk to lose their jobs. Palestinians, I see also in Europe, non-Palestinians, many of them, in Germany, for example, which is absurd, many of them are Jews, and they are not listened to, and they are not protected, because as someone, Daniela Feldman, was saying in a beautiful interview that she delivered a few weeks ago, she said, only the Jews who stand with Israel are protected. The others do not count. And this is something we can all be must be alerted of, and again protect this space for both for the Palestinians and the others. Businesses, I would say another thing, because there is a huge complicity of businesses in the illegal endeavors of the occupation. There are civilian businesses, pension funds. For example, something I wonder, do people in New Zealand know that through their pension funds there are investments made in the settlements? But we are talking of millions of dollars. And this must, I mean, I imagine that there are many people who ingenuously put their money in their pension funds to secure a better future for themselves, their children. They have no idea that by doing that, they're destroying someone's future and someone's presence today. So this is something where more awareness and more social responsibility must be activated. And of course, then there are other layers of responsibility when it comes to social enterprise, not only civilian businesses, pension funds, or money that goes into banks, or there is also the military complicity, or the complicity with surveillance. The Palestinians are the most surveilled people on earth. And not only this is a violation of their rights, of their privacy, and leads to other violations of their fundamental rights, but it's also very profitable, because the security technologies that is tested on them, then it's sold abroad. So again, always be careful. Armed struggle. So the right of self-determination has a flip side in international law. So people who are oppressed, people whose right of self-determination is violated, denied, have the right to resist the oppression. And this is recognized by the General Assembly, it's recognized in the additional protocol to the Geneva Convention, and it's also specifically recognized to the Palestinians. There is a resolution which refers to it, it's General Assembly Resolution 3236, paragraph 5, which says the Palestinians have the right to regain their rights with all means in line with international law, which doesn't foresee the killing of civilians and the commission of war crimes and crimes against humanity, just to be clear. The question is different though, because I was asked about armed struggle. When the Oslo Accords were signed, the PLO renounced the use of force. Does it mean that the Palestinians do not have the right to resist? No, they have, but we are no longer in the decolonization era. There is much less tolerance and much less sympathy among states toward armed struggle. Because now we're not in the decolonization era, we are in the post-9/11 era. So every form of resistance is taken as is easily equated with terrorism. We can debate about that. But my experience with the Palestinians is that their resistance through armed struggle in the last 30 years has been very limited. Palestinians do resist through the use of law, trying to use the international system as much as they can, and they resist peacefully through demonstrations every Friday against the wall, against home demolitions, and there are many Jewish Israelis with them. And this is not recognized, and this is why I say there is such a huge responsibility on the international community, because these people have tried everything. They have tried violent means, they've tried peaceful means, they've tried accountability, they've gone to the International Court of Justice, they're going again to the International Court of Justice, and nothing is given to them. And even, there is something that a new friend I made in Australia, Nasser Mashni, says, the Palestinians are killed, are blamed, are smeared. And this is the reality they face. Among others, I've called for a protective presence. What does it mean? To be fully honest, this is not my invention in the sense that it exists. Even the Secretary General of the United Nations in 2018 recommended, among the various measures to ensure protection of the Palestinians, a protective presence. What is protection? Is making sure that basic rights are met. So it should be the responsibility of the occupying power to ensure the protection of the occupied people, but clearly this is not Israel's priority. We can all agree about that. The Palestinian Authority is not there to protect the Palestinians, and clearly, because you have seen pogroms after pogroms after pogroms, attacks on demolitions, there is a security system which is geared, it's based on security arrangements with Israel. It's an extension of Israel's security system, I'm afraid, and therefore it's not there to protect the Palestinians. Therefore, next in line is the international community. A protective presence by the book would be peacekeeping operations recommended by the authorized or deployed by the Security Council, which is not going to happen tomorrow because of the veto of the Security Council. But still, there are other measures that can be taken. First of all, this should be a staple demand of sensible and conscientious countries. It should be there because the Palestinians cannot be slaughtered by armed settlers or by soldiers. There is a shoot-to-kill policy that is often used, and this has been documented by the Israeli organization B'Tselem, and this should prompt a sense of response among member states to impose, to pressure Israel not to oppose a protective presence. Because again, the occupation is illegal, so it shouldn't be upon Israel to make decisions anymore about the fate of the Palestinians under occupation. But while nothing happens, at least I've said, I've recalled the precedent, and this is probably what you have heard in the interview. The organization I used to work for when I was in Jerusalem, UNRWA, during the first Intifada, when there were violent attacks against the Palestinians, primarily by the Israeli army, deployed its own staff, its own personnel on the ground as refugee affairs officers. It was a very vague name, which might tell nothing to you, but they were acting as a passive presence. The very fact of them being at checkpoints, at schools, or in the places which could be hotspot for clashes between the army and the Palestinians, there would always be an international presence, and their presence, this is documented in Secretary General reports, happened to diffuse the tension, happened to dilute the violence against Palestinians. So in the absence of any other measures, now there are hundreds of international humanitarian officers, development officers, UN personnel. So this is why I've been calling for them to upgrade their capacity, get in their cars, and patrol the West Bank, because at least this could be an element to give a sense of protection to the Palestinians.
Thank you very much, Francesca. One last question, and then we finish.
Yeah, we'll finish after this. A legal question. The East Coast of the US, obviously represented very heavily by Jewish people in New York and Washington and so on. The only Palestinian representative in Congress, a woman, being talked down for defending Palestine and stepped down out of the government. The US government sponsors Israel. It gives them a lot of military aid and probably other aid as well. My question is, do you think there's a case for a war crimes against the US for providing the 1.6 billion, I think, that they've got on the table at the moment to Israel to facilitate what is going on? And I know that doesn't help Palestine now, but not for moral reasons, but for legal reasons. Could it be that there is something to be said about pushing the states back from being so involved in supporting Israel because of their contribution of money to the military which commits war crimes in the Gaza Strip?
Thank you.
Sir, I hope you don't mind me to make a precision, because words matter, and I don't think it's entirely correct to say pressure of the Jewish people on the US government, because never as this year I've seen many Jewish people, and especially young generations, taking the streets and being arrested and blocking train stations, and so it's better. Also because it's not correct. The pro-Israel lobby is made partially by people who are not even Jews. There are the Christian evangelical Christians, how do you call that? And again, these are the people you should talk to, including in this country or in Australia. This is something that in Italy we do not have. We have other sorts of problems, but we don't have the evangelical Christians. And so, as far as I know. But the question is, because of this pressure, the US is supporting, it's supporting, it's enabling, it has been enabling protracted illegality. This is not something that started on the 7th of October, but of course it's all the more serious when there is a risk, as I said, that a genocide with new means, with new technology, which is not the slaughter of bodies in the, one by one, but through bombs and the making conditions of life impossible and causing horrible suffering and trauma, physical and psychological. So yes, there are atrocity crimes that should be prevented, and in fact are almost enabled by all this support, including or primarily by the US. I cannot tell you with exact precision because this is not something I'm personally looking at, but I know that there are other lawyers, including in the US, who are studying this case, and certainly there is a responsibility that there is no precedent, as far as I know, for incrimination of this type at the international level, but who knows? I mean, I do believe that sooner or later justice will knock at the door of the right people. Hold on a sec.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Let me just finish by, I want to acknowledge Francesca, not just for what she's doing tonight. I've been working with her for the last few weeks. She was in Australia for almost 2 weeks before coming to New Zealand. Before that, she was in the US, and now she's in New Zealand for a couple of days. And again, I know she doesn't like to say that, but she's volunteering her time. She's even... Yeah. Even her coffee, you know, today we had an argument about who's going to pay the coffee. So I said, me or the UN? She said, no, me. So, and the other thing at a personal level, so Francesca is leaving a very lovely family behind home. And this is the biggest sacrifice. It's not money, actually. It's leaving family, being away for weeks and weeks and weeks, working from the early morning to the almost 10 p.m. She started her day at 6 this morning, and again, this is all for love. So she said I say for free, and she said to me, no, it's not for free, it's for love. So.
You didn't have to do that.
Okay. Thank you. She's already telling me off for what I said. I know I got in trouble. And I want to also acknowledge our heroes who are standing here with the green vests. And here, in the back, everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. I want to acknowledge those who have organized everything here tonight, including the sound system, our great friends here, the cameras, Neil Scott, Roger, and all our whānau. Sorry, I probably haven't Maharo, our whānau, and everyone. I haven't mentioned everyone by names, but this event wouldn't have been possible without everyone's contribution. I want to acknowledge you most importantly for turning up tonight, for participating, and for demonstrating and showing again and again your commitment for justice and peace. Thank you very much, everyone. We end with a song.
Wait. We want to end with a song that we have been working on for the last 2 weeks. It's a traditional ritual Gaza's song mixed with a karakia for the first time, and we want before this is to thank every one of us, every one of you guys who saw the atrocities and did not turn their gaze away like our politicians. And this is what this song is talking about. Wail for those, shame for those who see Gaza's suffering and turn their head and gaze away. And this is what this song is talking about. This is Tami Iti. For those, shame for those who see Gaza's suffering and turn their head and gaze. Eke panuku, eke tamarua, haumie, uie, taiki, uturukitu, amneke. Uturukitu, amneke, amneke. Aramaite toki, haumie, uie, taiki.
يا ويلي من شاف هموم الغزي وشاح بعينه الناحية الثانية يا ويلي لا يا ليل الله برد عقله بأمهات تدفن والداها بتراب اللالو أطفال نسيناهم بدموع ماسيهم والصبح تلقاهم فدوى للقصر ما يهابون الموت اشبال الله يخليهم يخلف بس عباقي العرب اللالو أطفال وإخوة وعزوة يتحامى فيهم ما ينضاموا في نفس اللالي لالو يا ويلي من شاف هموم الغزي وشاح بعينه الناح الثاني يا ويلي لانه
Thank you. Thank you all. This is our official logo for our Nakba for 75 years. In other language, from the river to the sea, not less than 1 centimeter. From the river to the sea. Thank you. And for more action, go to social media and look Action for Palestine. Thank you.